Michael Sterling, a 42-year-old millionaire CEO, known for his sharp suits and sharper decisions, stepped into the back seat of his sleek black town car after a tense meeting that had drained his patience. His mind still racing with numbers, contracts, and the constant hum of responsibility, his phone already in his hand as he prepared to send off a series of urgent emails, when he froze mid-motion because a small, firm voice from his right said, "Shut up," and he turned his head to see a young black girl, no older than 8, sitting in the far corner of the seat, her tiny frame partially hidden in the shadows, her mismatched clothes and worn sneakers telling a story her lips had not yet spoken. A frayed teddy bear clutched tightly in her arms, and for a moment Michael thought he must have gotten into the wrong car. But the familiar leather smell and faint trace of his cologne told him otherwise, so he looked to the driver for answers. But the man kept his eyes on the road and muttered something about just for the ride, which made no sense at all, and Michael, used to being the one in control, felt an unusual sense of confusion and irritation bubbling inside him. But before he could demand to know who she was and why she was in his car, the girl pressed a small finger to her lips in a shushing gesture and said softly, "Please, just be quiet," her gaze fixed firmly on the world outside the tinted window, as though she were searching for something, or perhaps someone, and the seriousness in her tone was so unexpected that Michael found himself leaning back, instead of arguing, his curiosity beginning to outweigh his annoyance. And as the car rolled smoothly through the city streets, he noticed how tense she seemed, her small hands gripping the teddy bear so tightly that its stuffing bulged in odd places, her eyes scanning every corner they passed, and when he finally whispered, "Why?" she didn't look at him, only replied in a low, almost secretive voice, "If you talk, they'll hear," which sent a strange shiver down his spine because he didn't know who they were or what they might do, and the silence that followed was unlike any he'd experienced before, heavy yet oddly fragile, as though breaking it might cause something unseen to shatter. And so Michael stayed quiet, his phone forgotten in his lap, his mind now full of questions he didn't know how to ask without crossing some invisible line, wondering how a child could carry such gravity in her voice, wondering why she was here at all. And with every passing street, every flash of light and shadow, the mystery around her seemed to grow thicker, making him realize that whatever was happening in this car was far more important than any meeting he had planned for the rest of the day. Michael sat in the back seat, his body still, his thoughts restless, the quiet between him and the little girl growing heavier with each passing second. And though every instinct told him to ask questions, to demand explanations as he would, in the boardroom, something in her steady gaze and the way she clutched her teddy bear made him hold his tongue, as if speaking too soon might ruin something delicate. And so the car moved on through streets lined with flickering neon signs and half-empty sidewalks, while the hum of the engine became the only sound, and after what felt like an eternity, he risked another glance at her, noticing how her eyes darted from building to building as though mapping a secret route in her head. Her tiny frame tense but unshaken, and finally he whispered, "Why can't I talk?" But instead of looking at him, she kept her gaze fixed on the passing view and murmured, "If you talk too much, you scare away the good things that are trying to find you." Her words soft but certain, leaving Michael with a strange mix of confusion and curiosity. Because it was not the answer of a frightened child, but of someone who had learned something through experience. And though he wanted to press further, the way she hugged the teddy bear closer told him she had said as much as she was willing for now. So he leaned back, realizing with a hint of surprise that he hadn't picked up his phone since getting in the car, his usual habit of checking messages replaced by the odd desire to simply watch the city slide past. And it was then he began noticing the details, the street vendor flipping warm pretzels under a dim lamp, the old man leaning on a cane across the road, the busker playing a mournful tune on a violin near a closed cafe, and he wondered if this was what she meant, that speaking might distract from the quiet moments that held their own kind of importance. Yet the mystery of who she was and why she was here continued to press at the edges of his mind. And when he glanced toward the driver again, hoping for a clue, the man kept his eyes firmly ahead, his expression unreadable, as though he too had agreed to this strange unspoken rule of silence. And the more minutes passed, the more Michael felt that this journey was not just a ride to some unknown destination, but the start of something he could not name. A shift in the air, a pause in the life he thought he understood. And as the girl adjusted her seat slightly, her knees pulling up as if to make herself smaller, he realized that whatever story she carried was one that needed to be told in its own time, without pressure, without interruption. And so he let the silence be, even though it was filled with questions, because somehow he sensed the answers would mean more if they came when she was ready to speak. Michael kept his eyes on the girl, waiting for any sign that she might open up. And after several more minutes of silence, she shifted slightly, lowering her teddy bear and glancing at him as if deciding whether or not he could be trusted, her lips parting just enough to say, "My name is Amara," and though the name was soft, it seemed to carry weight, like a piece of a puzzle he didn't yet understand. And when he introduced himself in return, She gave the faintest nod before looking back out the window, her gaze following the blurred lights of the city. And then, almost as if speaking to herself, she began to explain in a slow and halting voice that she was on her way to her grandmother's house, the only safe place. She knew, because her mother worked long hours as a nurse and could not come with her. And as Michael listened, he noticed how she carefully avoided certain details, skipping over where she had been before or why she had been walking alone. Instead, speaking only of how she had been moving from one bus stop to another until the driver, an old friend of her grandmother, had spotted her and offered her a ride. And though the story sounded simple on the surface, there was something about her tone, the way she gripped that teddy bear whenever she paused, that told him there was more hiding beneath. And so he stayed quiet, letting her fill the space with whatever pieces she was ready to share. And when he finally asked about the first words she had spoken to him, those unexpected "shut up," she gave a small shrug and said, "Sometimes, if you talk too much, you scare away the good things that are trying to find you," repeating it in the same measured way she had before. But now he noticed the faintest flicker of sadness in her eyes, as if those words had once come from someone she cared about, and it made him wonder if she had lost more than she was letting on. And as the car rolled on, passing through quieter streets where the glow of the city gave way to dimly lit houses, he found himself thinking less about his work and more about the strange calm she seemed to carry despite the shadows in her story. And it struck him that she wasn't simply running from something, she was carrying something with her, an understanding that most children her age could not have. And he realized then that this small chance encounter was pulling him into a story that was far from over, a story that felt like it had chosen him, even if he had no idea why. The car moved into quieter streets, the glow of the city fading behind them as streetlights stood farther apart and shadows stretched longer across the road. And Michael found himself staring out the window in the same way Amara did, noticing things he usually ignored, the way porch lights flickered faintly, the way a stray cat darted between garbage bins, the way the air outside seemed still yet alive with unspoken stories. And for the first time in years, he felt no urge to check his phone or think about meetings, instead focusing on the strange calm that had settled between them, a calm that was not empty but full of something unexplainable. And as he watched Amara from the corner of his eye, he saw her humming softly, a tune so gentle it almost blended with the hum of the engine, her knees drawn up to her chest, her teddy bear resting in her lap. And though he could barely hear it, the melody stirred something in him, some half-forgotten memory of simpler days when life wasn't a constant race. And he wondered if she even knew the effect she was having on him, this child who had appeared in his car with no warning, carrying words that made him think in ways he hadn't in years. And as they passed a small park, Amara leaned forward, peering into the darkness as if looking for a sign, then sat back without saying a word. And Michael resisted the urge to ask what she had seen because he felt she would tell him only if she wanted to, and instead he let the silence stay, finding it strange that it no longer felt awkward but rather like a shared agreement, as if they both understood this journey was not just about reaching her grandmother's house but about something in between, something that could only be felt. And the driver, still focused on the road, gave no hint of impatience, his steady hands on the wheel guiding them through turns that seemed almost rehearsed, until they entered a narrow lane lined with old houses, some with chipped paint and crooked fences, others with warm lights glowing behind curtains. And the air seemed thicker here, quieter still, like they had stepped into a different world. And Amara's humming grew softer until it stopped completely, her eyes fixed on a point up ahead. And Michael followed her gaze to see a small weathered house with a porch swing swaying gently in the night breeze, a faint golden light spilling from the windows. And though they had not yet stopped, he felt a strange pang in his chest, a reluctance he couldn't explain, because part of him knew that whatever connection had formed in this brief time might soon be gone. And as the car rolled closer, the scene outside felt almost like the ending of a chapter he didn't want to finish. Yet deep down he sensed that the real story was only just beginning. The car slowed to a stop in front of the small weathered house, the porch swing moving gently as if stirred by an unseen hand, and Michael felt an odd heaviness in his chest, the kind that comes when you know a moment is about to end but you are not ready to let it go. And before he could say anything, Amara reached for the door handle, her small fingers hesitating for a second as though she, too, felt the weight of this goodbye. Then she stepped out, her teddy bear tucked under her arm, her mismatched shoes tapping softly against the pavement as she walked toward the gate where an older woman stood waiting, her warm smile illuminated by the golden glow from the house. And Michael watched as Amara ran into her arms, the woman bending down to hold her in a hug that spoke of safety and belonging. But just before they turned to go inside, Amara looked back at him, her eyes steady and her voice carrying clearly through the quiet night as she said, "Thank you for being quiet. It made room for the good thing to find you." And those words, so simple, yet so strange, lodged themselves deep in his mind, making him realize that she was not just talking about the ride but about something far greater, something he could not yet name. And as the door closed behind her, the driver started the car again, But Michael remained still, staring at the empty space she had left behind. And for the first time in years he felt no rush to be anywhere. No urgency to answer calls or check emails. Instead, sitting in the silence, she had taught him to value, and as they pulled away, the streets seemed different, warmer, softer, more alive, as though her presence had shifted something in the way he saw the world. And he wondered if perhaps the real lesson she had given him was not about silence at all, but about making space in life for moments that could not be planned or controlled. Moments that arrived quietly and left just as quietly, yet stayed forever. And though he knew he might never see Amara again, he also knew that whenever he found himself drowning in the noise of his own world, he would remember this night, the little girl with the teddy bear, and the strange truth that sometimes the most important things are heard only when we choose to listen to nothing at all.